1917 marks a turning point in the aeronautical industry. New aeroplanes of impressive size appear. Bombers, giant aircraft that can fly hundreds of kilometers, easily carrying a payload of 500 kilos of bombs. Aviation production enters a new era thanks to the use of the inline engine, which resolved the problems of weight, as well as to the efforts of automobile manufacturers who are called in as reinforcements. 7,500 aeroplanes are manufactured in France, and more than 16,700 engines. Large quantities are required because a quarter of the production is destined for the Allies. This industrialization leads France to the forefront among the aeronautical powers. In April 1917, Paul René Fonck, like Ginemer before him, finally joins the French aviation elite, the Stork Squadron. He is overjoyed at this new posting, which helps him to add to his number of victories.
I bag the first one, then I turn to the other one. Ta-da! I get the pilot bang in the belly. He goes down, rolls over and tips out the passenger. In the middle of all that, I come down like a bird. Beautiful, no? I'm not just a beginner.
There's the commander. Go on, speak to him. Don't be timid.
You really can't talk about the Stork Squadron without mentioning its glorious leader, Commander Brocard, a highly skilled pilot and the first French pilot to have shot down a German plane with his revolver.
Stand easy. So you are Fonck?
I am, Commander.
I'm warning you, it's imperative to defeat the Boche.
I'll do my very best, Commander.
Yes, I know. Carry on, then.
I felt like a little boy when he walked towards me and held out his hand.
René Fonck, who is posted to the 103rd Squadron, achieves the status of ace on the occasion of his 5th kill on the 13th of May, 1917. But he's still way behind the man who is the spearhead of the 3rd Squadron, the super ace of the moment called Ginemer, who already has nearly 50 kills to his name.
Georges Guynemer had, without doubt, a fine reputation. His name was well known, as was his unit. It was 3 Squadron, the Stork Squadron. So it was no surprise that his rigorous and merciless attitude, together with his skill as a pilot, inspired fear in the Germans.
Ginemer is a formidable pilot. The French fighters are now equipped with synchronized machine guns. The German pilot Ernst Udet has no idea he's about to meet his greatest challenge. He takes off early one morning, looking for easy targets, observation balloons.
I don't know if there's such a thing as a sixth sense, but I have a sudden feeling of danger. It's impossible to get into a position to take a good shot. And before long, I realize that my opponent is none other than the famous Georges Guynemer. At last, he's at my mercy. I'm going to bring down Ginemer. 8 minutes. We were stalking each other. The longest 8 minutes of my life. But what a marvellous contest it was. If only the stakes hadn't been so high. It's not just that his machine is better. The man flying it is better than me too. I get back to base, and I'm dazed.
His famous encounter with Udet, which Udet writes about in his memoirs, according to which Ginemer let him off with his life, is rather doubtful. At this time, Ginemer is ruthless. If he didn't shoot, it was because he couldn't. Either he had engine problems or machine gun problems. His machine gun was jammed and he couldn't free it right away. It's a moot point, but to my mind, I don't think Ginemer would have left any of his enemies alive if he found them in his sights.
At the same time, the French and British governments are at a deadlock and want peace. They are planning a major offensive for the spring of 1917 in the region of Arras that should put an end to the war within 48 hours. It's down to the British to lead the attack.
Bloody April, in 1917, as the English call it, was one of the deadliest months of the war in the air. April 1917 saw the German 6th Army stationed close to Arras. This 6th Army, constantly engaged against the English, included 9 squadrons of fighters during that month of April.
The most formidable German Jaster in Bloody April, which saw the greatest number of casualties the Royal Flying Corps had seen in the war thus far, was Jaster 11, which was von Richthofen's squadron.
During this period, Jaster 11 chalks up 89 victories, of which 21 are attributed to Richthofen alone. In overall ranking, he is now ahead of Bölker. Richthofen has his famous Fokker triplane, a remarkable plane armed with impressive weaponry, and that he has painted red.
In 1916 and 1917, squadron commanders were allowed to choose their colours. They proved to be very inventive, creating coloured overalls, ornaments, motifs, lettering and other designs, which served primarily for recognising each other in the sky. And Richthofen used to keep that same colour, from one aeroplane to the next model and so on, which earned him the nickname the Red Baron.
It was a way of attracting attention. The colour was a bait, and the German chiefs of staff decided that it was really too dangerous. And they ordered then that all the planes should be painted red, in order to protect their ace pilot.
I get the feeling that up there, in that great medal factory, that we're all sharing each other's life and success, and that we're not just a lot of numbers. Perhaps death is lying in wait. My superiors want me to take retirement before it's too late. But I would despise myself if I retired, while all those poor devils in the trenches carry on doing their duty.
The British pilots' only answer to the Red Baron and his squadron seems to be nothing more than their courage and their daring. In some squadrons, life expectancy varies between 3 and 6 weeks. During the bloody month of April, English ace Albert Bull's 60th Squadron loses 13 of its 18 pilots and 7 of their replacements. Then in May 1917, Albert Bull himself is killed during a dogfight with Jaster 11 Squadron. Despite their youth, Richthofen at 24 and Ginemer 23 almost seem like veterans. It is thanks to them that the public and the press roll out the red carpet for any pilot who has started to make his name. In Berlin, as well as in Paris, pilots on leave strut around the city in all their finery. "We are like pop stars," said Alfred Ertl, an ace with 21 victories. But this star system, invented for public consumption, has its downside. The soldiers in the trenches begin to resent the pilot's fame. Bearing the full brunt of this endless and bloody war, they feel abandoned. In some regiments, the first mutinies break out.
Captain, would you have a cigarette for me? Thank you very much. Watch out, it's a Boche!
He's taking a risk to drop his shit on us? Where's our pilots?
They're in Paris, knocking off our women, and they think they're saving the motherland.
But so we're in danger. We could soon be dead meat.
And the papers never even mention us.
When I go on leave, I haven't even the strength to take a bath.
Yeah. You know what they do, the aces? They apply to go on mission that make a splash. Oh yeah, they have to be in the spotlight with their fancy pea shooters. And as for the others, the lads who are in the shit, us, that's just tough, mate.
Complaints intensify in Lorraine, where during the summer of 1917, the Second Battle of Verdun takes place. Ground troops reproach Allied aircraft for failing to protect them from enemy planes. Bled dry by the defeats of the spring, the British and the French have high expectations of the United States, whose first troops have just landed to join the war. Unfortunately, they are not yet battle-ready. Tired of his fame and the ongoing adulation, weighed down by expectations and deprived of the right to die, Ginemer spends 5 days in hospital with nervous depression. The journalist Jean Tournier, who had met him in the lift of the Hotel Edouard VII, described a glowering, feverish man. Someone else was shocked by the drooping shoulders of a hero who had given all he had. Ginemer, however, refuses to believe that he is finished.
All well, Captain?
And the engine, check the ignition?
Yes, I have. And I've done the fuel and ammunition. It's all tip-top. But are you sure you're all right? Itching to get back to Paris?
I'm going up.
But, Captain, shouldn't you wait for some other pilots before you fly? The Boche always hunt in packs. And the commander, he said...
I know very well what he said. Get round the front, I'm going.
Commander Brocard henceforth bans pilots from flying solo against groups of German fighters. Ginemer doesn't like this. It's a strategy for beginners. He wants to be free, to fly where he sees fit, to be a knight in shining armor, bursting out of the sun into hand-to-hand aerial combat and returning to base, his fuselage riddled with bullets, but safe and sound. Just as was reported in the campaign diaries of the Air Force, when he lands, he has the look in his eyes of a wild animal after a fight to the death. Georges Guynemer takes off on September the 11th, 1917, never to return.
Dear Minister for War, I am convinced that the enemy is deliberately concealing the circumstances surrounding the disappearance of my son. We have still received no reply to our request for information addressed to the President of the Republic through the good offices of the King of Spain. We can no longer accept the Germans' silence and their lies.
"16 days later, on September 27th, a German communiqué is finally published in the Gazette des Ardennes. On September 11th, a French pilot fell from the height of 700 meters on the Ypres front, not far from Dunkirk. A German NCO immediately hurried to the scene. The pilot was dead. His face was unscathed, and he was recognized from his identity card in the name of Georges Guynemer. The name Ginemer would be engraved in the Panthéon. At the time, journalists begin to wonder who will take his place as avenger, a man who, in his turn, would incite the admiration of the crowds with his flying skills, and who would soon overshadow Ginemer.
Fonck was likened to Ginemer for his brilliant flying in aerial combat. But their methods were quite different.
Fonck always tried to get into the dominant position. That meant in many cases he was behind and underneath.
And Fonck would usually fire 1 or 2 bullets directly at the head. That was his method. Ginemer was a bird of prey. He would fly up into the sun and then dive onto his victim like an eagle.
Ginemer attacked from any position. He would get as close as possible, then let off bursts of machine gun fire.
Fonck was a cool customer, Ginemer was a daredevil.
What is quite clear is that Fonck, from the moment he has become the super ace, is certainly extremely proud of being the best fighter pilot, at least in as far as he had that desire to beat records. Yes, that was him all over.
Which explains how Fonck will soon mark up such incredible scores. Fonck has a big advantage over Ginemer. He is very much at ease flying in a squadron.
Three times. I took the Germans' fire without responding. My objective, above all, is not to waste my cartridges, and only to use my bullets when I'm sure they might hit their target. Killed, like the roll of the die, only takes a fraction of a second.
As a result of the patriotic fervor for victory, he naturally forgets all compassion for his victims.
Chief Warrant Officer Fonck, at ease. It was me who killed that cuckoo.
I know. We could see you from here. We're still wondering how in blazes you did it.
Is that the pilot?
Yes, it is, sir.
In most cases, the only alternatives are victory or death. And it's rarely possible to show mercy without betraying the homeland.
Doesn't it seem pretty strange to you all the same?
Strange?
was just a boy, wasn't he?
Listen, it was him or me. Do you think I should have asked him his date of birth?
No. Of course not. Here. His personal papers are in the name of Wiesmann.
Wiesmann?
Wiesmann. Wasn't that the name the German papers gave as the man who shot down Ginemer?
Have you got any tools? I'll go and get his machine gun.
Go and get me the tools.
French military propaganda will omit to mention that the Wiesmann shot down by Fonck is just a namesake of the pilot who had downed Ginemer. But this event is a turning point in Fonck's career. From the moment that Ginemer is killed, Fonck's relentless rise will accelerate. He is the new star of the Stork Squadron. But it is thought better to promote the prestige of the squadron itself, whose name is immortal, rather than the pilots who are not.
It's a combat between squadrons. The squadron became a symbol. It has a timeless quality. We still speak of the Lafayette Squadron rather than the people who made a name for themselves, and these squadrons still exist.
Richthofen's circus travels along the front, moving to where it is most needed. But other less well-known squadrons also live in the shadow of tragedies. Like Squadron 40 that Mick Mannock joins in 1917, and for which he has been fighting for 7 months.
I went and inspected the remains of a biplane I'd shot down. It had crashed right in the middle of the trenches. Walking across the battlefield made me feel nauseous. Legs of the men killed in battle were sticking out. They still had their puttees and their boots on. Bits of human skull with what was left of their hair. And the smell, it was terrible, in this open-air cemetery. And the mutilated body of the German I'd just shot down.
You should have stayed behind, Mick. You need a change of scene.
I'll be all right. Leave me.
What got into you going over there? I wouldn't want to see the corpse of one of my victims.
Because I'd missed so many targets, I began to wonder whether I could see correctly, so I felt I had to check. And I missed so many.
Okay. See you later.
I'm a murderer. Me too.
Mannock is a man, I would say, of mature years. Compared to all those young pilots who became crack pilots, superheroes, and who are only 24 years old, if that. By the end of the war, Mannock is a veteran of about 30.
I think he was just a nice guy who, once he became reasonably successful, was accepted by his guys and they would follow him anywhere. And he would often rally his lads by saying, let's go and get some of these guys and burn them up and set them on fire. And they would go down sizzle, sizzle, zonk.
Industrial effort provides the Allies with an incredible new aeroplane, the Spad. But the Germans have the Fokker triplane, and it allows Richthofen to boost his reputation in the air. And for this, he is indebted to Anthony Fokker, a young Dutch manufacturer. Fokker is celebrating the signing of a new contract with German aviation.
Would you like a drop of wine?
No, thank you, Mr. Fokker.
Do you not imbibe?
No. Besides, I shouldn't even be here. You will see, the party will pick up after my departure. No, please, gentlemen, don't get up. How many victories have you scored, Lieutenant?
17. There's one more to confirm.
Well, let's say 20. You're good and right for my wing. Would you be happy to be with us? Fancy flying triplanes?
With the greatest pleasure, Rittmeister.
A French cigarette? You must remember one thing. Your targets. You must do more than destroy them. You have to burn them up. You attack when you've made sure you're strongest. And if you have to shoot them in the back, you shoot them in the back. Gentlemen, ladies, may I wish you good night?
Ladies and gentlemen, the world's greatest pilot, Baron von Richthofen.
Thank you.
There are many good fighting squadrons in the German army, but there is only one called Richthofen.
On the 3rd of March 1918, after more than 3 months of negotiations, Lenin signs a peace treaty with Germany. The German troops in the east are now about to move back westward. Germany intends to use this advantage to launch a decisive offensive. In the west, American troops are now ready to support the French and the British. But even this is not enough. 3 weeks later, on the 21st of March 1918, the Germans launched the Battle of the Kaiser near Arras. The British lose more than 28,000 men. Overwhelmed by German forces, the French and British armies are forced to withdraw 60 kilometers. The situation is becoming critical. The Germans have just opened the road to Paris.
Captain, look over there.
Faced with this relentlessly tightening vice, the Allies launch a counter-offensive. For the first time, air power is called on for help as an autonomous force in its own right, rather than as an auxiliary to the infantry or the artillery. Squadrons fly in from everywhere for a massive air offensive. It is called the Charge of the Airmen.
They're charging with bayonets. In the name of God.
What's happening, Captain?
Look how they're chucking bombs. The enemy's in complete chaos. Troops' convoys a complete mess. The horses are all panicking. Now we just have to go over the top and pick up the pieces.
Well, for once, I'm glad to be here.
Like all the Allied pilots, Edward Manock realizes that the tide is turning to their advantage. But he also knows that the least error, the slightest sign of weakness, will be exploited by the enemy.
Yes, I completely lost you. But if you think I'm a coward, well then, fill her up with petrol and we'll take off together, you and me. Fly as far as Berlin if you feel like it.
Berlin? That's a good idea. Are you ready, lads?
It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary. To the sweetest girl I know.
On the odd occasion when the air is heavy in the mess, Manock manages to lift the morale of his men. Thanks to him, they become a family. A happy, efficient, and united team. Every squadron needs great pilots, but pilots who are also great leaders.
At the end of the war, taking all the facts into account, people realized that the most admired and respected man was Manfred von Richthofen. Richthofen had a good eye. A good eye not only for spotting the enemy and jumping him, but he also had an eye for moral values, for skills. He flew with the men, he saw how they behaved, and as it happened, Udet was not in his squadron, he was in bombers. And he saw him during exercises and noticed his qualities.
Well, Richthofen, as leader of his squadron, you can only tell, or you can tell somehow by looking at the photographs, many of which have survived, when there are groups of them on the ground, either just after they've landed or about to take off, and they're all jovial, they're all smiling, and he's the centre of attention. There's always, and of course his dog Moritz was always leaping about, being petted by everybody. I think there was a great rapport. They were a great bunch of killers.
In March 1918, Richthofen entrusts him with the command of Jasta 11 and announces it to him informally as he gets out of his plane on his return from a mission. Udet would have liked a celebratory drink in the mess with other pilots.
I knew that one day he'd put me in command of a squadron, but letting me know in this way surprised me a little. You have to take him as he is, get used to that cold, pragmatic manner he uses to show what he thinks of you, without a hint of feelings. Ever since my 24th victory, I've had earache that worsens every day. It feels like someone working with a hammer and chisel inside my skull.
The company nurse has kept me informed about your state of health. Your ear is seriously infected. You absolutely must have some rest, Udet.
But I'm not particularly tired.
I was badly wounded last year. I know how it feels to be under par. We can only return to the front when we're in perfect physical condition. Otherwise, you become exhausted, cave in, and get shot down.
But Captain, I'm sure it'll pass as quickly as it hit me. You know we need all our pilots fighting. There are 5 times as many on the enemy's side.
No, Udet, that's my final word for the moment. You must leave tomorrow. It'll only be for a few days.
But I mustn't leave our squadron when we're scoring one victory after another.
My decision is made. Return to us in good shape. That's an order.
But Captain, you know that we all believe in the law of series here.
Udet reluctantly returns home on a forced leave. A few days earlier, the Red Baron had chalked up his 80th kill and had been decorated with the 3rd-class cross of the Order of the Red Eagle with crown and sword. The Emperor himself sent him a telegram on this occasion. Wear this as a sign of high recognition from your king for these 3 years of war and for your exceptional conduct as an airman.
Oh, Ernst, look at those roses. They're superb.
Mounted on barbed wire.
Well, well, look at this gentleman all dressed up for the ball. And he wants to take the bread out of an old woman's mouth. It's in the trenches. You should be.
2 bouquets, please.
What?
I've asked you for 2 bouquets.
2?
If you would be so obliging.
I didn't mean to insult you, I assure you, my dear. You'd have to be blind not to see he's too young for the army. It's quite obvious you're only a boy who's just made his first communion.
A boy? But you know he's one of our aces. He's been awarded the Order of Merit.
Impossible.
But it's true.
Same as the Red Baron. You know he's been killed, the Baron.
No, impossible.
That's what people are saying. Read it in the newspaper. It appears he didn't come back from a mission, and he hasn't been seen since.
I have to go.
The following day, the aeroplane and the lifeless body of the Red Baron are eventually found. Richthofen died on the 21st of April 1918 at the age of 25. If he hadn't been on leave, Udet might have been able to protect his leader. Or he might also have been killed in his place.
What a man he was. Other pilots had a wife at home, children, a mother, a trade. Whereas he lived permanently beyond that border that most of us cross only in the greatest hours of our existence. Nothing counted anymore when he was fighting. He was, above all, the simplest man I've ever known. A mere mortal.
With the death of the Red Baron, Germany goes into national mourning. The country will never forget the Baron's credo. Fight till the last drop of blood, the last drop of petrol, till the last beat of your heart. As if relieved and freed from the overwhelming shadows of Richthofen and Ginemer, other pilots begin to chalk up particularly spectacular victories. Paul René Fonck soon scores some doubles and some triples in just seconds. Not a single enemy bullet ever touches his fuselage. Does he believe himself invincible? Fonck had natural talents that explain his success. His resistance to hypoxia allowed him to attain high altitudes, and his exceptional eyesight meant that he could identify enemy planes at a distance from which they could not see him. On the 9th of May 1918, Paul René Fonck sets himself an incredible challenge: to bring down 5 German planes in one day. He spots an observation biplane escorted by 2 fighters and catches up with them. A salvo of 15 bullets is enough to bring down the 2 fighters. Then a burst of incendiary bullets causes the biplane to explode. 3 planes in 45 seconds. Back at the base, Fonck receives congratulations from Garros. But Fonck announces that he will not celebrate his victories. He recalls his wager to bring down 5 enemy planes. He is too short. And in less than 3 hours, the sky will be full of great black crosses.
To make a kill sometimes involves taking great risks. And it is clear that in this race for victories, this race for top performance, he sometimes took insane risks.
I've brought down 3 enemies, but it's not enough. My day isn't over. It's easy to bring down an enemy the moment you've come out of the mist. And that makes 4. The upshot is I've lost my best mate, but I've discovered a 5th target. Here I am alone against 9. I mean to take advantage of the situation to achieve my 5th kill. I'll bring him down with a well-aimed burst. Fifth plane down. I know what the consequences might be, but the situation is too good to be true. I dive down towards my 6th victim, take him down in one single salvo. Now there's 6 of them against me. I'll have to escape somehow. What a terrible dilemma. Confront the oncoming storm, or the German fighters following me. Decision made. Describe the reception I got. Endless ovations. By 8 p.m, my 6th victory had been recorded. I'd passed the objective I fixed on earlier that day.
Acclaimed by the press, Fonck is decorated with the Cross of the Legion of Honor.
There was, of course, a certain rivalry between squadrons, and each squadron had its champion. And each squadron supported its own champion. And even in the same fighter group, there was rivalry between the squadrons.
The greatest thing was to win an Order of Merit, which was granted in 1915 after 8 victories. Everyone wanted to have this decoration, this public recognition. Just think, someone wearing the For Merit order walking in the streets of Berlin in front of the barracks would systematically have the guard come out and salute him. So there were social repercussions clearly linked to this decoration.
But now that you've as many victories as bishop, they'll definitely roll out the red carpet for you after the war.
There will be no after for me, Clem.
What do you mean?
Come on, hurry up. We're taking off.
That same day, Manuck brings down his 73rd adversary. Between the spring and the summer of 1918, the victories in the Somme have a worldwide impact. The 8th of August 1918 is, according to General Ludendorff, a day of mourning for the German army. It is the beginning of the great Allied offensive that is to lead to the final recovery of French and Belgian occupied territories.
The war in the air is also escaping us. For one plane that takes off on our side, there are 5 on the other. Since the Americans entered the war, fighting has been more and more uneven.
After Richthofen's death, Udet, like Fonck after Ginemer's death, is regarded in Germany as the new ace of aces. In August, he scores his 61st and 62nd victories. But to general stupefaction and to his great vexation, he is not named as the leader of Richthofen's squadron. That honor goes to a certain Hermann Göring, the man who will become one of the most faithful followers of Adolf Hitler.
Just come back from leave and 2 victories already.
You're the man they should have nominated instead of...
Commander.
Not too serious, is it, Udet?
Just a flesh wound. The bullet went through the flesh.
Especially...
Let him finish his report.
61st and 62nd planes brought down. But through no credit to me, I was in the last albatross.
The D3. She's a fighter. Tell me all about it. What were you facing?
De Havillands. 5 of them. One of them was lagging behind a bit. I made short work of him. The others wanted revenge, but soon got tired of it.
Well, that's not like the English. Last year it took me 10 minutes of looping and diving before I could finish off one of their aces.
But that was last year. Admit, we're all suffering from fatigue.
Don't complain, Udet. It's pretty nice of me to leave you the job of bringing down airplanes. Gentlemen.
How many more times is he going to tell us about his victory last year?
If only he flew more often. Bad need of a leader up there.
You bet. When he takes to the air, he fills up with wind.
Udet's 62nd kill is to be his last. He survives the war. Roland Garros is not as lucky. On the 5th of October 1918, just a month before the armistice, France learns of his death in the Ardennes.
When Roland Garros is killed on the 5th of October 1918, Fonck is extremely upset because Garros was his hero during his childhood and adolescence.
Roland Garros is a pilot of peace, really. And what he had done was the stuff of dreams. He opened up the sky, crossed the ocean and the sea.
He is much more deeply affected by Garros's death than by Ginemer's. In Garros, he has lost a hero, a model whose death he wants to avenge. In Ginemer, he loses a rival.
On the 1st of November, Fonck records his 75th victory, of which he says, "I gave Garros a great funeral." A tribute from the adolescent he was when Roland Garros beat the altitude record at 3,950 meters. The 11th of November 1918. A great wave of joy submerges all of Europe. It is the armistice. This world conflict has cost the lives of nearly 10 million soldiers, 9 million civilians, and resulted in more than 21 million wounded. And 670,000 soldiers' bodies from all nationalities were never to be found. At the end of the war, the French Air Force has more than 12,000 aeroplanes. This is the result of an extraordinary effort made by the hastily developed aeronautics industry, which, in 4 years, has mobilized 180,000 men and women workers. 4 years in which Germany has lost 27,000 planes, France 52,000, and Britain 36,000. More than 10,000 pilots from all countries have lost their lives. Richthofen with his 80 victories and Ginemer with his 53 will always remain romantic symbols of First World War aces. It is thanks to their perseverance that they became fighter pilots. Pioneers of a weapon in the making. They wrote essential pages in the history of aviation and military warfare. They died young and gloriously. They have become myths. Mannock has also become a myth, although he could barely see out of one eye. 4 months before the end of the war, on the 26th of July 1918 at 5:30 in the morning, he takes off in his SE-5, accompanied by a second plane. Disobeying his own orders, Mannock had apparently followed a falling enemy aeroplane and flown nose down towards the battlefield. A German soldier will send his belongings back to England. But the spot where his body is buried will never be found. In his last letter, he had written prophetically,
My good fellow, if I'm killed, I'll be in good company.
On the 26th of July 1918, Mannock joins Richthofen, Ginemer, and all the fallen pilots of the first air war in history.